So in this part, we are going to use a while loop and some other things to build a game that moves a sprite back and forth and up and down the grid when the microbit is tilted. So our main parts here are move the sprite left when the microbit tilts left, move the sprite right when the microbit tilts right, and move the sprite up when we tilt it like back and up, like kind of down and up, down and up. Move the sprite down when we tilt it down. So for our pseudocode, this looks kind of messy. For our pseudocode, we want to press A to start the gameplay. All right, so that's how we want to actually start our game. We don't want to start it immediately, but we want to be able to press A to start the gameplay. If the microbit tilts to the right, then the sprite moves one space to the right. If the microbit tilts to the left, then the sprite moves one space to the left. If the microbit tilts forward and down, then the sprite moves one space up. If the microbit tilts backwards and down, then the sprite moves one space up. So those are something that we can probably recognize as our if-then statements, right? Those are conditionals. So we know how to do those. Now up here we said we were going to press A to start the gameplay. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But we actually are going to press A, and while the game is playing, these if-then statements are going to continue to run. So our input is going to be press A. Our output should be that our sprite is moving up and down and across the board. We're going to have quite a few variables. So the first one is the sprite, right? So sprite is a variable that stores location. So we have to be able to tell that variable where to go when we tilt the microbit. We also have to have some sort of input from the microbit. Now your microbit has an accelerometer inside it, and this accelerometer can tell whether the microbit is being tilted, if it's level or being tilted. So we're going to have two variables with this. One is the x tilt. So x is from left to right. So we're going to measure whether it is tilting from the left and the right. And then the other one is going to be the y tilt. So we're going to measure whether it's tilting front and back. So those are going to be stored as variables as well, because we're going to take some input from the accelerometer inside the microbit to tell us whether or not the microbit is actually tilting. It'll make more sense in a minute. And then there's the play variable. So are we actually playing the game? Okay, so when we press A to start the gameplay, that play is actually a variable that we can start and stop. So now you can see our pseudocode is getting a little bit more complicated. So let's go into our make code. And we're going to create a new program. Make sure you sign in up here. I'm going to do a new project. And we're going, let's just call it tilt. Again, let's be descriptive in the naming of our titles. And we're going to create this. Let's keep our forever, and let's get rid of our on start. Now we said that we wanted to press A. My mouse is not, there we go. We want to press A, and when we press A, that's going to start our game. So to start our game, we need to have a sprite, right? If we want to move the sprite, we have to have a sprite. So let's go into variables and let's make one, and you can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it sprite. So on button A, we're going to set our sprite to a certain place. Let's go into the game. So remember, in that game menu, we are going to create a sprite. Let's leave it at 2, 2, because where is 2, 2? If we come over here and press our A button, There's our sprite right there in the middle. So this doesn't start our program as soon as we turn on our microbit. We have to start the A button, and that's going to create our sprite in the center. All right, and now we want to move it. Let's move this up here out of the way. So we're going to use the forever block. Okay, so forever, we're going to do all of these things. So we said that if the microbit tilts to the right, then the sprite moves one space to the right. And if the microbit tilts to the left, then the sprite moves one space to the left. So we won't have much of a game if the microbit isn't detecting whether it is being tilted or not. So we want to detect the tilt forever. So the whole time we're playing this game, we want to detect whether it's being tilted. So remember that the tilt is something that is changing, which is a variable. So if you haven't done so already, let's go into the variables toolbox, and we want to make another variable called the x tilt. So we want to set the x tilt to read the rotation of the microbit in the x and y direction, in the left and right horizontal direction. So this means that the variable needs an input. This is a new one that I don't think many of you have discovered yet, but we're going to go up here into the input in this toolbox, and we're going to bring out the rotation block, which is somewhere, probably in more. There it is. So you might have to click on more. We want this rotation, right? So we're going to rotate our microbit after we set our tilt. So let's go back into variables. We're going to bring that out. So we're going to set our x tilt to read the We're going to set our x tilt to read the rotation. Now there's two options here. We have pitch and we have roll. Okay, now in aeronautics, we have very specific terms for when the airplane is rolling from side to side or rolling up and down. Okay, so an airplane can travel in 3 dimensions, really, without touching anything. So we have different tips, we have different terms for how things move. The roll in an airplane is a tilt from left to right. So level is 0 degrees, and then we're going to tilt to the left, and then we're going to tilt to the right. Okay, that's called roll. Pitch in an airplane is when the front and back are rotating up and down. So if the nose of the airplane starts to move up or down, that is called the pitch. So this x tilt block, so we set x tilt to read the rotation of the roll. So x is in the horizontal, it's left to right. So that is going to read the rotation. So how much roll, how much rotation do we have to the left, and how much do we have to the right? That's what our x tilt variable is going to be measuring. And so this block is going to use the accelerometer in the microbit to store the angle that the microbit is turned from level. So from here, we want to define our if statement for the roll, or the tilt left and right. So if the microbit tilts to the right, we want the sprite to move one space to the right. So let's bring out an if block. Let's just drag one in, and we're going to do this forever. So if what is true. Now we're going to need a comparison, because what we're going to do is we're going to drag this out here. I'm going to put this in here. So if something is more than a certain rotation, right? So the microbit level is 0 rotation. So if the x tilt, remember this is measuring how much tilt we have, is greater than 10 degrees. We're going to give it a little bit of play. If we make this any smaller, it's going to be too super touchy. So x tilt when it's level, the x tilt equals 0. So what this is saying is if the x tilt, if we move to the right more than 10 degrees, then we want to move our sprite to the right one space. Now, how do we move our sprite? We have the sprite change. Oh, there it is. We are going to change our sprite by 1. Now we know how much the microbit likes to go super fast, so let's just get ahead of that early and put a pause in there. So here's what this is. So forever, we have the x tilt variable, and it's reading the rotation. It's reading the roll left to right. If that roll is greater than 10 degrees, then we are going to move the sprite in the x direction by 1. So let's test this. Oh, we have a very unhappy thing. What did I do? I don't remember what I did. Oh, I know what I did. Okay, so we have not told the program really to start. We haven't started our game yet. So we want to come up here. We talked about that play variable. Okay. So since we're using the A button to start the game, we need to have some way of keeping track of how long to play the game. So we are going to have a new variable. I'm just going to call it play. You can call it game or whatever you want to. So what we want to do is we want to set the game. And is the game on or is it off? So before we press the A button, it's off. It's false. Is the game on? False. Is the A button pressed? True. So in our logic, we have true and false options. And we're going to put this in here. So when we press the A button, we turn the game on, is essentially what we're doing there. So our set play to true, we turn it on. How long do we want this if to go? How long do we want to measure the tilt? We want to measure it all the time. That's where our while loop comes in. So we're going to put this into a while loop. So while the game is on, so while, here we go, play, where's my variables, is true. Oh, I don't want that one. I want an equal. I clicked on the wrong one, sorry. I want this one. What one did I grab? I don't know what I grabbed there. So while play equals true, not play and true. That makes sense. That's not logical. All right, so forever, when we press the A button, we're going to turn the game on. Play is true. While play is true, we want to read the tilt and move it if it's tilted enough. Okay, so that's just that's kind of not really a glitch, but that's just like a weird kind of thing that the microbit does. So computers are picky to tell them exactly what to do. So now if we come over here and we press this A button, if we tilt it to the right, what happens? It moves to the right. Now it moves pretty fast. You might want to change your pause. If we do that, that should slow it down. Yeah, that's a little bit easier. Now, how come it doesn't go to the left? We've only defined it to the right, right? We've only told it to move to the right. So what we need to do now is we need to define if we tilt it this way, if we tilt it to the left, we want our sprite to move to the left. So we have our X tilt. This is where it is sensing the rotation. If it is greater than 10, then we move by 1. All right, we want another, just copy this whole thing. So if the X tilt is greater than 10, we're going to move to the right. Here's where it changes a little bit. Right is positive in roll. Left is negative. So we want to measure the negative angle. When we go to the left, we're going the other direction. Positive and negative in physics is just direction. So positive means to the right, negative means to the left. So if we are tilting more than 10 degrees positive, we're tilting to the right. Now we're going to move our sprite to the right. We are going to need to tilt less than negative 10. So this is going to read the negatives. The bigger the negative number, the less it is. So we want to be less than 10, which is actually more than 10 degrees to the left. So if the X tilt is less than negative 10, we want our sprite to change its position in the X by negative 1. And we're just going to put that right inside this while loop. So we have two if statements. If we're tilting more than 10 to the right, we move to the right by 1. If we're tilting more to the left, negative, so less than negative 10, we're going to move to the left. So let's see if this works. It does. So if we tilt to the left, we tilt to the right, we tilt to the left, we tilt to the right. All right, so here's your assignment. Finish the program so that the sprite moves back and forth and up and down when you tilt the microbit in the different directions. And then make it cool. Add a countdown to start the game. So before you start moving the sprite, have a countdown to get ready to go. Then add a sound each time the sprite moves. So say it has a different tune every time that it moves a different direction. If you want to get really fancy, see if you can figure out how to add a second sprite that represents like food for the original. So you can add a point to the game score when the sprite catches the food. This is a pretty advanced one, but I think a lot of you are pretty smart and you should be able to do that.